What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with some more content. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, smash the like button if you enjoy the content. All right. This video here is kind of random. Okay. It's just it was the idea that I had just thought about based on what I see, the criticisms that I see of these three fighters, Terence Crawford, Alexander Usyk, and Naoya Inoue. Okay. These three fighters, to me, in my opinion, in the last 2 to 3 years, have been the top three fighters in the world. Okay. Some people may want to throw Usyk in there or Dimitri Bivol or Canelo Alvarez. But in my opinion, I think these three fighters right here have been the top three. And I've seen the orders all over the place. See, some people don't even include Usyk sometimes because he is a heavyweight at this point, at this stage in his career. He's not a career heavyweight, but he's been a heavyweight for some years now. But these three fighters, in my opinion, are the three best fighters in the world. And I realized, I was doing some thinking, right? Because I do content on these three all the times. And I read all of the criticisms from all these three fighters, not just on my platform, but on other people's platform, on social media and all that. And some of the things that I see from fans today, you know, I think people forget, sometimes that there's a stage where you have accomplished so much. There are people that they don't just want to see you lose, but they want it to be proven that you've been exposed. Like they want fighters that get exposed. These three fighters, let me make one thing clear. And listen, I'm not, this is just my views. Um, because I just don't think a lot of times the fans, it's like they forget very quickly. They can be ultra disrespectful. Um, but these three fighters, they can't be exposed. You can't do what they've done and be exposed. These are not guys that won a vacant title somewhere or just pulled off a random upset and just went on to lose every other fight in their career. You know what I mean? These are three guys that have done it over and over and over again. They have no defeats. Okay? They don't have any draws. They might have had some controversy in their careers. They might have been knocked down before. They might have had some tough fights, questionable wins, close wins. You know, um, you can criticize every fighter. No one is really perfect. There's no way for you. There's no fighter in the history, whether even the ones that's undefeated. No one has had an easy road throughout the career. So some of the criticism that I see from people, especially for the people that believe that these fighters can still be exposed at this stage of their careers, winning division after division, becoming undisputed in multiple divisions. These three fighters right here have become undisputed in two different divisions. And two of these fighters have been champions in four different divisions. Usyk can't because Usyk was a cruiserweight that moved up to heavyweight. And heavyweight is the final stage. You can't go past that. So this is why people don't even include the heavyweights in pound for pound, because they're the biggest guys. You know what I mean? But these three fighters cannot be exposed. There's nothing that can happen now that would change my opinion on them. If they were to both, all three of these guys were to lose their very next fight, even by KO, yes, it may change their legacy a little bit, but their legacy is already solidified. At the very, very, very least, they're Hall of Famers. And that's at the very least. And people have fought throughout their career to reach that goal. These guys, at the very least, are Hall of Famers. These three guys are generational greats. Inoue is probably the greatest Japanese fighter of all time. You know what I mean? Alexander Usyk is probably the greatest Ukrainian fighter of all time. You know? But at the very least, these guys are the best in their generations. You know what I'm saying? So the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I've been following the three of these guys for years, and I've been making content on these three, and I've seen the up and downs, I've seen the tough fights, but I realize that between these three, I like all three of them, but I like them for different reasons. And I think the criticisms that I have of them are for different reasons as well. You know what I mean? These are three totally different guys. One is a European, one is an American, and one is from Asia. And they're all from three completely different divisions in the sport. You got one that's in heavyweight, you got one that's a little bit in the middle at the welterweight, super welterweight divisions, and you got one all the way from the flyweights all the way up to bantamweight. All right. So these guys are covering three different areas in the sport, and they're totally different, and they had different careers, but they became champions time and time again in different divisions, and they're all three undefeated. Crawford, I'm going to start with him because the way I have this set up, I have the three faces right here, and I have everything set up here, anything that I need to go back on. But Terence Crawford, I'm going to start with him. Crawford, 4-division champ, 2-time undisputed champion. What I like about Crawford, and what I believe comparing to the other two, I believe that Crawford is probably the most fundamentally sound with having the power to go with it. You know what I'm saying? Compared to the other two. Whereas, I just think that he's a very cautious fighter, but he's not a boring fighter. He can be defensive. He is defensive, but he likes to get knockouts too. Outside of his most recent fight with Israel Madrimov, Crawford usually goes for the kill. He went up to a different division for a bigger fighter, and he just decided to be a little bit more cautious. But Crawford, to me, what I like about him is that you see the fundamentals. You see in me, all three of these guys are technical. I love the fact that he was able to switch throughout his career, getting these knockouts. It seemed like when he's running out of time, he's gotten some late stoppages. I like the caution in his approach, but he was able to do it all. He can walk guys down. He can fight on the back foot. He's very physically strong. I think he's the most versatile out of the three. I think he can do the most out of the three because he can switch it up in so many different ways. He doesn't have the same approach every time he fights. He has a different approach every single time. And I think that's what makes him unique. Plus, he has the power to go with it. So guys that are considered boxers, really, really good boxers, technical boxers, defensive guys, they normally don't have the kind of power that Terence Crawford has. And to me, I think that's what makes him special. You know what I mean? You just can never really sleep on him. Even with the fight with Canelo coming up, I thought at some point it was crazy. But now as we're getting closer and it's getting real to me, I'm like, oh my God. When it comes to that fight, when it happens, can I really go against Bud? You know what I mean? Because he always finds a way. Like the other two so far in their careers. I think the criticism that I have of Terence Crawford as a big fan, and I'm a fan of all three, I think the criticism that I have is just he just doesn't fight enough. And maybe preserving himself may be it could be part of the reason on why he's still undefeated at this point and still fighting at a very high level. I love the fact that he doesn't get out of shape in between, fights and stuff like that. But the one criticism and the main criticism that I have of Crawford is that he's not that active. He's been fighting once a year for some time now. Some of it is not his fault, but I just wish he was a little bit more active. He hasn't fought more than once since 2019, back when he fought Egi Kavalaskas and Amir Khan in that year. And, even before that, he was fighting multiple times a year, all the years before 2019. But since then, it's been once a year. And in some of those years, it wasn't like the exact guy that we wanted to see him fight. A couple of those fights I did want to see, but some of those fights were just like tune-ups to me that he only still fought once that year. And this is why some people don't put him as number one, because he doesn't fight that much. You know what I'm saying? So I think that is the one criticism. That's the main criticism. But as far as him getting exposed, even if he was to lose to Canelo, or even were to come down to 154 or lose to one of those guys, if that were to happen, the career is already set in stone. Because it's 4 division champion here at the highest level. You know what I mean? And yes, you can say like, in the Matrimonial fight, he didn't look that good. Or you could say, he was down to 140. I like Josh Taylor's run. These are some of the things that I hear a lot about Crawford. Josh Taylor had a better run at 140. Crawford's run at 140 wasn't that good. Well, he's not in control of who's at the division, who's at the top of the division at the time that he's there. The fact that he went on a run and won all of the titles is very important. I think the Josh Taylor time where he was there with Regis Prograis and Jose Ramirez, I think that was fun to watch, more fun to watch. But it doesn't necessarily mean that those guys were better. I just think that they were more competitive with each other because they're around the same level. If Crawford was there on that, I'm sure most of us would expect the same outcome to happen at 140. Usyk. Alexander Usyk, cruiserweight, that went to heavyweight and became undisputed 2 times. What I like about Usyk is that he's smart. I think with these 3, I think Usyk probably makes the least mistakes. I think he's the smartest one in there. I love the fact that his cardio is so great. He's a southpaw, but he keeps beating really bigger guys. He's been in some tough matches. I think his 2 fights that were the toughest to me, besides Tyson Fury, Marius Briedis was tough. Tony Bellew was pretty tough. Derek Chisora was really, really tough. But he always found a way to win, even when it was really, really close. Some of these fights were really, really, really close. But for whatever reason, he still found ways to outwork every opponent that he's faced. Until this day, Usyk has not lost the second half of any fight he's been involved in. So even in the fights where you felt like he was down or he was losing a little bit, he has never been the one to lose in the second half of any fight. And I think that's very impressive, especially as he ages. He's 38 years old. Crawford's 37. At 38 years old, beating Tyson Fury, who's younger than him, and being the amateur that he was, a great amateur, having all this time and all this experience and still find ways to outwork all of these much younger natural heavyweights, much bigger guys, to outwork them all, to outthink them all. I think that's very impressive. You know what I mean? I just think that this is a guy going into the Triple D rematch. And we know all the criticisms. The criticisms that I hear, Triple D should have won that fight. That was a knockdown. What else do I hear? Oh, Breedis beat him. It was close, but I think Breedis edged it. Or I think David Chisora did better than what they say. Excuse me, hold on, let me get some water. All the criticisms that I hear from this guy about this guy here, it's cool because no one's above criticism. You know what I mean? But to me, what makes this guy special, and I think what I have him over these other two, is the resume. Because in 23 fights, Crawford with 41, Inoue with 30. In 23 fights, he's able to fight the super elite in those two divisions and beat them all. Not even one draw in 23 fights. And I know a lot of that comes with the amateur experience that he's had. But there's been plenty of amateurs. Recently Lomachenko retired. Lomachenko had way more hype than Usyk, and didn't have as many fights. But he got a title shot in his second fight and his third fight, and he has so many early title shots without proving himself as a great pro. But Usyk did the same, but he beat all of those guys. And the cruiserweight division was really, really, really good at the time. The best it has been for a long time. He made it interesting with the World Boxing Super Series. That's the thing that stands out. With Crawford, like I said before, Crawford to me is the most versatile. Usyk to me has the best resume. Because in 23 fights, even legends, it would take them triple the amount of fights to beat that quality of people. There was no tune-ups. There's barely any tune-ups in between. Most of those guys were undefeated champions. And most of those guys were bigger than him. I think the only flaw with Alexander Usyk really is, or the only criticism is that he had a couple close fights. One that he's going to try to fix when he fights Triple D, and I'm nitpicking here. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, the Breedis fight was very close, I think he beat Fury. I think he beat Chisora. I thought it was close, but I've heard people say that they thought Chisora edged it. These are criticisms that I heard, Same with Crawford. Some people think Madrimov did enough to win, like some people think Velasquez, knocked him down, which I think is questionable. I've said this on the channel. These are criticisms that we're all going to have. But with Usyk, I really don't think there's many criticism there. You don't have a resume like that. And there's no room to get exposed. There's no room. It's impossible. You can't beat those people and get exposed. It's impossible. Fury and Joshua twice? It's too much. World Boxing Super Series Muhammad Ali Trophy champion, gold medalist in the Olympics, hundreds of amateur fights. No. He can't be exposed. He's one of the greats. And as far as I'm concerned, he has the best resume. When it comes to quality over quantity, this is the perfect example. And this is why he should easily be there in the top 3 pound for pound. Because he's not even there strictly off size. It's based off his talent. Just like the other two. Inoue. What I like about Inoue compared to the other two, because I think he's the funnest to watch. I like watching all three. Terence Crawford, very fundamentally sound, knock guys out. Usyk, very smart in the ring. You know what I mean? Very strategic in his style. Inoue, especially in recent years, overall, he looks like he's having fun in there. And I'm going to start with the criticism. The criticism is going to be, He got knocked down by what? Caceres? By Neri? Or I'm sorry, Cardenas, not Caceres. Cardenas. His last fight, he got knocked down by the same punch that Neri dropped him with. You know, the criticism earlier in his career is that he only fought Nonito Donaire, or he didn't fight anyone. Man, did you see how he got off the mat each time and destroyed his opponents? Cardenas was dangerous the whole fight, and Inoue didn't fight safe. Unlike most fighters that get hurt in the ring or get knocked down and they back off, Inoue fought harder. He's a little crazy. He's a little cuckoo. And this was what makes him great. This guy started as a flyweight, a light flyweight, skipped flyweight, went to super flyweight. He's won titles in all 4 divisions. He's fought at 2 division undisputed champion. But with all the criticism, because those first three divisions, people didn't really believe in him. It wasn't until the 4th division, it wasn't until he got the super bantamweight up at 122, where people had to respect him. Whatever criticisms you had, you didn't fight no one. Okay, cool. When he moved to 122, and everyone is clearly bigger than him, and they also hit hard. You finally saw him bleed a little bit. You finally saw him struggle a little bit. But guess what? He still won. He still won. And he collected the belts. And he's defended them on multiple occasions. But he was able to still give us that action we were looking for. The Cardenas fight early this year, second best fight of the year to me, after Eubank and Ben. Second best fight that I've covered this year. You know, even the Marlon Tapales fight. Who expected Tapales to box so good? People look at those fights and start criticism like, see, he's not a monster. Yeah, he's a man. But at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? If he struggled a little bit, he still found ways to win. Just like Crawford when he struggled in fights. Just like Usyk when he struggled in fights. You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be criticism. There's nothing that can happen to this guy, whether he loses his next fight. His career is solidified. His legacy is solidified. Again, for the 3rd time in a row, you don't do what he did and become exposed. Can we stop using that word? Whether you have him at number 1 and the other 2 at 2 and 3, Crawford at number 1 and the other 2, Usyk, whatever way you have it ordered. These guys have separated themselves, and Canelo too, because Canelo has done the same. You know what I mean? He hasn't won undisputed in multiple divisions, but he's won titles in a lot of the divisions. You know what I mean? And I mean, I don't need to go down Canelo's career. I'm just going to do these 3 because I have them at the pound for pound, and they get mentioned the most in the top 3. But Inoue really, for me, really stepped up when he moved to 122 and had those tougher fights. I was actually more impressed at 122 because he started to struggle a little bit. I actually get more impressed when a fighter struggles a little bit, and I like to see how he gets out of it. When it goes too smooth every single time in and out of the ring, that's when I'm like, this is too easy. And this is why when Donaire gave him that tough first fight, this is why so many people said, Donaire is old, he's washed up. You know, all of these guys being Rigo beat him years ago, and Walters knocked him out years ago. Why is he struggling against the old Donaire? Okay, he did, but then he stopped him quickly in a rematch. He moved up, he became undisputed, he moved up, and he beat better guys, fresher guys. There's no way you beat Stephen Fulton the way that he did, right? And Stephen Fulton has already come back and done better since then. There's no way you beat Fulton the way that you did. That was a crazy moment. and it was coming right after Crawford beating Spence. Those two performances, Fulton against Inoue, Crawford against Spence, those don't happen by accident. Those wins, they don't happen like by accident. You can't get exposed for winning like that in that fashion. But what I like about Inoue, to me, like I said earlier, he's a little crazy. You know, I think Crawford is too, because in certain fights, he takes a different approach with each fight. You know, sometimes he tries to run through these guys, and I think that's part of the reason why the Velasquez fight was tough. You know, I don't think he took the approach he should have taken. I think he wanted to just get him out of there, and he got caught and hit a lot in that fight. But again, this what makes, when people say, "Oh, this fighter got hit too much," yeah. When we're analyzing a fighter, I think those points should be made. I make them all the time. But when we're talking about enjoying the fight, I love those kind of fights because it makes it competitive and it makes it entertaining. Because what we don't want is some of the fights that we got in Times Square. You know, you have one fight, you got one fighter moving too much, you got another fight that's not throwing enough punches. We don't want that, right? We can all agree to that. We want to see a little drama. I want to watch a nail biter. And that's why Inoue, to me, as far as action, I got to go with him. I think Crawford is more balanced. He's like a mix between Inoue and Usyk. I think Usyk is smart. There's some drama in his fights, but not in the way, you know, like he's smart first, always. You know what I mean? I love these three. Um, you know, I particularly don't have an order anymore. You know what I mean? Because I do believe what I will say. I do believe that if Crawford is to beat Canelo, that would be the single greatest win. Obviously, Spence is his greatest win. Usyk's greatest win is probably the Tyson Fury win. Um, and then with, in a way, you know, it's probably the Fulton win. It's probably the Fulton win that's the most impressive. You know, I know Donier, legacy wise, that would probably be the best win. But I think it's. I mean, with the three of them, it's really about the body of work. You know, and whatever they continue to do, um, you know, it's starting to look like Inoue's greatest opponent might be Nakatani by the time that they fight. So I'm looking forward to that. But even if he is to lose, it'll be his time. It's okay. He's 32 years old. Usyk is 38 and Crawford's 37. I think we should be more appreciative of these three. You know, I think Inoue has made it out. It's made it hot in Japan. He has people like me waking up at 4 in the morning to cover boxing here in New York. You know, Usyk made the cruiserweight division hot, and then he gave us plenty of inspiration by going up to the heavyweights and doing it for a bunch of guys that took too long to fight each other. He went up there and beat the majority of them. You know what I mean? And Crawford, again, with him going to different divisions, all right, showing that business can be done between different promoters. Okay, going through that mess with PBC and him being with Top Rank and all of that stuff. But moving to these different divisions too, just like the other two, and continue to do it. Now you got a mega super fight that's going to be on Netflix that doesn't involve Jake Paul. I love it. I appreciate what these three did. Please, guys, let me know in the comments who are your top three. You know, in what order do you have them? These are my top three. What do I have them in order? Well, I think Crawford. I'm still gonna always say Crawford is the most skilled to me. He's always been the most skilled between these three. I think Usyk has the best resume. I think Naoya Inoue is the funnest to watch. That's the way I have it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.